For thousands of years, the pyramids of ancient Egypt have stood as some of the most awe-inspiring structures ever created by human hands. Rising from the desert sands along the banks of the Nile River, these monumental stone structures have captured the imagination of historians, archaeologists, engineers, and curious minds across the world. Among them, the most famous are the pyramids located at the Giza Plateau, just outside modern-day Cairo. These colossal monuments were constructed more than 4,000 years ago, during a time when advanced machinery, steel tools, and modern engineering techniques did not exist. Yet, despite these limitations, the ancient Egyptians managed to build structures that have survived millennia, earthquakes, wars, and the relentless forces of nature. The question that continues to fascinate scholars and enthusiasts alike is simple but profound. How did an ancient civilization achieve such an extraordinary architectural feat? The pyramids were not merely massive stone structures. They were deeply symbolic monuments built for the pharaohs, the powerful rulers of ancient Egypt who were believed to be divine beings. In Egyptian belief, the pharaoh was not just a king but also a living god on earth, serving as the intermediary between humans and the gods. When a pharaoh died, it was believed that his soul would ascend to the heavens and join the gods in the afterlife. The pyramid, therefore, was designed as a monumental gateway to eternity, a carefully constructed tomb that would protect the king's body and ensure his successful journey to the afterlife. Inside these pyramids were complex internal chambers, burial rooms, hidden corridors, and elaborate traps designed to deter grave robbers. The largest and most famous of these structures is the Great Pyramid of Giza, built for the pharaoh Khufu during Egypt's 4th dynasty, around 2600 BCE. Originally standing at about 146 meters tall, it remained the tallest man-made structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. The pyramid was constructed using an estimated 2.3 million blocks of limestone and granite, each weighing several tons. The sheer scale of this undertaking raises countless questions. How were these enormous stones cut with such precision? How were they transported across long distances without modern vehicles? And how were they lifted and stacked to such incredible heights? For centuries, these questions fueled myths, speculation, and even wild theories involving lost civilizations or extraterrestrial assistance. However, modern archaeology and scientific research have revealed that the true story of the pyramids is even more impressive. Rather than relying on mysterious forces, the pyramids were built through careful planning, skilled labor, advanced knowledge of mathematics and astronomy, and the collective effort of tens of thousands of workers over many years. Understanding how the pyramids were built requires us to look beyond the stones themselves and explore the civilization that created them. Ancient Egypt was one of the most organized and technologically sophisticated societies of its time. The Nile River provided fertile land for agriculture, allowing the population to produce surplus food. This agricultural abundance made it possible for the state to mobilize large labor forces, especially during the annual flooding season when farming temporarily stopped. Workers, craftsmen, engineers, and laborers could then be directed toward monumental construction projects like the pyramids. The construction of a pyramid was not a chaotic endeavor but a carefully orchestrated national project. Teams of architects, engineers, stonecutters, transport workers, and supervisors collaborated in a highly structured system. Evidence from archaeological discoveries suggests that the workers were not slaves, as was once commonly believed, but rather skilled laborers who lived in organized worker villages near the construction sites. These workers were provided with food, housing, medical care, and even received recognition for their contributions. But before a single stone block could be placed, ancient Egyptian planners had to choose the perfect location, design the structure, and ensure precise alignment with the cardinal directions. Remarkably, the pyramids of Giza are aligned almost perfectly with the north, south, east, and west axes. This level of accuracy suggests that the builders possessed sophisticated knowledge of astronomy and surveying techniques. The story of how these massive monuments came into existence is not simply a tale of engineering. It is also a story of human ambition, faith, organization, and perseverance. The pyramids represent the combined efforts of an entire civilization working together to create something that would endure for eternity. Even today, thousands of years after their construction, they remain symbols of human ingenuity and determination. As we begin to explore the process behind the construction of the pyramids, we must step back in time to ancient Egypt's Old Kingdom, the era when pyramid building reached its peak. During this remarkable period, powerful pharaohs commissioned ever larger and more ambitious pyramids in their quest for immortality. What began as simple burial structures eventually evolved into the colossal pyramids that still dominate the Egyptian landscape today. In the next part, we will explore the early origins of pyramid construction and how ancient Egyptian burial architecture evolved from simple tombs into the massive pyramid structures that changed the course of architectural history forever. Long before the Great Pyramids of Giza rose above the desert, the ancient Egyptians had already been developing burial traditions for centuries. In the earliest periods of Egyptian civilization, long before the time of the powerful pharaohs of the Old Kingdom, people buried their dead in simple graves dug into the desert sand. These early burials were relatively modest. The bodies were placed in shallow pits along with personal belongings such as pottery, tools, jewelry, and food. The dry desert environment naturally preserved the bodies, unintentionally creating some of the earliest examples of mummification. Over time, as Egyptian society became more organized and hierarchical, burial practices grew increasingly elaborate, especially for rulers and members of the elite. As the authority of the pharaohs expanded, so did the desire to create more permanent and impressive tombs that would protect the king's body and possessions for eternity. This led to the development of a structure known as the mastaba. Mastaba were rectangular, flat-roofed buildings made primarily of mud bricks or stone. They had sloping sides and stood above underground burial chambers where the deceased was laid to rest. These structures also contained rooms for offerings and rituals, allowing priests and family members to perform ceremonies that were believed to sustain the spirit of the deceased in the afterlife. Mastabas represented a significant advancement in Egyptian burial architecture, providing protection against animals, grave robbers, and environmental damage. One of the most revolutionary moments in the history of pyramid construction occurred during the reign of Pharaoh Djoser, who ruled during the Third Dynasty around 2670 BCE. Djoser commissioned a brilliant architect and engineer named Imhotep to design his tomb. Imhotep would later become one of the most celebrated figures in ancient Egyptian history, known not only as an architect but also as a physician, scholar, and priest. Instead of building a traditional mastaba, Imhotep conceived an entirely new design that would fundamentally transform Egyptian architecture. Imhotep's innovation was to stack several mastabas on top of one another, each layer slightly smaller than the one below it. The result was the Step Pyramid of Saqqara, the first large-scale pyramid ever constructed. Rising approximately 60 meters into the sky, the Step Pyramid was unlike anything that had ever been built before. Its distinctive stepped appearance symbolized a stairway that allowed the pharaoh's spirit to ascend toward the heavens and join the gods. This groundbreaking structure marked the beginning of the pyramid-building era in ancient Egypt. The construction of the Step Pyramid required remarkable planning and organization. Massive limestone blocks had to be quarried, transported, and carefully positioned to form the layered structure. Surrounding the pyramid was an enormous complex that included courtyards, temples, ceremonial buildings, and high protective walls. This complex served both religious and political purposes, reinforcing the pharaoh's divine authority while providing a sacred space for rituals related to the king's afterlife. The success of Djoser's Step Pyramid inspired later pharaohs to pursue even more ambitious projects. However, architects and builders soon realized that the stepped design could be improved. Over time, Egyptian engineers experimented with ways to create smoother pyramid surfaces rather than the stepped layers seen at Saqqara. This experimentation led to several transitional pyramids, including those built during the reign of Pharaoh Sneferu, the founder of Egypt's 4th dynasty. Sneferu was one of the most prolific pyramid builders in Egyptian history. Determined to perfect the pyramid form, he ordered the construction of multiple pyramids, each representing an important stage in architectural experimentation. One of these structures, known today as the Bent Pyramid, reveals the challenges that ancient engineers faced. During construction, the builders realized that the steep angle of the pyramid's sides threatened its structural stability. To prevent collapse, they changed the angle halfway up the structure, creating the distinctive bent shape that still fascinates visitors today. Despite this challenge, Sneferu's architects eventually succeeded in building what many historians consider the first true smooth-sided pyramid. This structure, known as the Red Pyramid due to the reddish color of its limestone blocks, represented a major breakthrough in pyramid design. With its uniform slope and stable construction, the Red Pyramid demonstrated that Egyptian engineers had finally mastered the architectural techniques needed to construct massive, smooth pyramids. These early experiments laid the foundation for what would become the most famous pyramids in the world, the Pyramids of Giza. Sneferu's son, Pharaoh Khufu, would inherit both the throne and the architectural knowledge gained from these earlier projects. Determined to build a monument that would surpass all others, Khufu ordered the construction of a pyramid on a scale never before attempted in human history. The lessons learned from Mastabas, the Step Pyramid, and Sneferu's experimental pyramids provided the knowledge necessary to undertake this colossal project. Engineers now understood how to manage stone weight, how to calculate pyramid angles, and how to organize thousands of workers efficiently. With these innovations in place, the stage was set for the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza. In the next part, we will explore how ancient Egyptian engineers selected the site for the Pyramids of Giza and how they achieved astonishing levels of precision in planning and aligning these monumental structures. Before the first stone of the Great Pyramid was ever placed, ancient Egyptian planners faced a crucial decision. Where should such an enormous monument be built? The selection of the construction site was not random. It required careful consideration of geography, religion, transportation, and long-term stability. The chosen location would need to support millions of tons of stone while also holding deep symbolic meaning within Egyptian religious beliefs. Ultimately, the builders selected a plateau on the western bank of the Nile River, a place that would later become known as the Giza Plateau. In ancient Egyptian culture, the West held powerful symbolic significance. The sun rose in the east and set in the west each day, and this daily cycle was closely associated with life and death. Just as the sun disappeared beyond the western horizon before returning the next morning, Egyptians believed that the souls of the dead traveled westward into the afterlife. Because of this belief, many royal tombs and burial sites were constructed on the western side of the Nile. Building the pyramids on the West Bank aligned perfectly with this spiritual symbolism, reinforcing the idea that the pharaoh's soul would journey into the eternal realm of the gods. The Giza Plateau offered several practical advantages as well. The area consisted of a solid limestone bedrock foundation capable of supporting the immense weight of the pyramids. This was extremely important, as a weak or unstable foundation could cause the structure to shift or collapse over time. The plateau also provided a relatively flat surface that could be leveled with careful engineering. Ancient builders used a combination of tools and techniques to measure and smooth the ground, ensuring that the pyramid's base would be perfectly stable. Another important factor in choosing the site was its proximity to the Nile River. The Nile served as the main transportation highway of ancient Egypt. Massive stone blocks needed for the pyramids were often quarried from distant locations and transported by boat along the river. Being close to the Nile made it much easier to move these heavy materials efficiently. During the annual flooding season, when the river expanded across the surrounding land, temporary canals could even be dug to bring boats closer to the construction site itself. In addition to practical concerns, the site also allowed the pyramids to be positioned in alignment with the stars and the cardinal directions. The ancient Egyptians possessed remarkable knowledge of astronomy, and this knowledge played a key role in the orientation of the pyramids. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, for example, is aligned almost perfectly with the 4 cardinal points: north, south, east, and west. Modern measurements show that the error in this alignment is incredibly small, only a fraction of a degree. Even with today's advanced tools, achieving such precision would require careful measurement. Scholars believe that Egyptian surveyors used observations of the night sky to determine true north. By tracking the movement of certain circumpolar stars, stars that never set below the horizon, they could establish a reliable reference point for orientation. These stars were particularly important in Egyptian religious beliefs because they were associated with eternity. Aligning the pyramid with the heavens symbolically connected the pharaoh with the eternal stars, reinforcing the belief that the king's spirit would live forever among the gods. Once the location had been chosen, the next challenge was preparing the ground itself. The base of the Great Pyramid covers more than 13 acres, and every part of that base needed to be level. Archaeological evidence suggests that Egyptian engineers used water-filled trenches to measure level surfaces. By filling channels with water, they could observe where the ground needed to be cut down or filled in to achieve perfect balance. This method allowed them to create a remarkably flat platform for construction. The precision achieved in this early stage of the project is one of the most impressive aspects of pyramid construction. The base of the Great Pyramid is almost perfectly square, with each side measuring approximately 230 meters in length. The difference between the longest and shortest sides is only a few centimeters, an astonishing level of accuracy considering the tools available at the time. This level of precision suggests that Egyptian architects used advanced surveying methods and highly organized planning long before construction even began. In addition to leveling the ground and marking the pyramid's boundaries, builders also planned the internal structure of the monument. Passageways, chambers, and ventilation shafts had to be carefully mapped out before the pyramid rose above the ground. Once the outer layers of stone were added, altering these internal features would become nearly impossible. This meant that the entire structure had to be designed in extraordinary detail from the very beginning. With the site prepared and the blueprint carefully planned, the ancient Egyptians were ready to begin one of the most ambitious construction projects in human history. The next step involved gathering the enormous quantity of stone required to build the pyramid. Millions of limestone and granite blocks would need to be cut, shaped, and transported to the construction site. In the next part, we will explore how ancient Egyptian workers quarried the massive stones used to build the pyramids and the remarkable techniques they used to cut and shape these blocks with incredible precision. Once the location of the pyramid had been chosen and the ground had been carefully leveled, the next enormous challenge was obtaining the vast quantity of stone required for construction. Building a pyramid on the scale of the Great Pyramid required an extraordinary amount of material. Historians estimate that around 2.3 million stone blocks were used in its construction, with individual stones weighing anywhere from 2 to 15 tons. Some of the granite blocks used in the internal chambers weighed even more, reaching up to 70 tons. Acquiring, cutting, and shaping these stones required a massive and highly organized workforce, along with techniques that demonstrated the ingenuity of ancient Egyptian craftsmen. The majority of the pyramid's core blocks were made from limestone, a relatively soft and abundant rock that could be quarried locally. In fact, much of the limestone used for the core of the Great Pyramid was taken directly from the Giza Plateau itself. Archaeological evidence suggests that large quarries existed very close to the construction site, allowing workers to extract stone without transporting it over long distances. By carving blocks from the surrounding bedrock, builders were able to reduce the effort required to move materials across the desert. However, not all the stones used in the pyramid came from nearby quarries. The outer casing of the pyramid was originally covered with high-quality white limestone that came from quarries at Tura, located on the eastern side of the Nile. This limestone was prized for its smooth texture and bright appearance. When the pyramid was newly completed, these polished casing stones reflected sunlight brilliantly, causing the structure to shine across the desert landscape. From a distance, the pyramid may have appeared almost radiant under the Egyptian sun. Even more impressive was the granite used in certain internal structures of the pyramid, such as the king's chamber. Granite is much harder than limestone and extremely difficult to cut with primitive tools. Yet the ancient Egyptians transported massive granite blocks from quarries in Aswan, located more than 800 kilometers to the south of Giza. Moving such enormous stones across such a great distance was an incredible logistical achievement that required careful planning and coordination. The process of quarrying stone began with marking the desired block on the surface of the rock. Workers used copper tools, stone hammers, susud, and wooden wedges to carve channels around the outline of each block. Copper chisels and saws were among the primary tools used for cutting limestone, although these tools needed frequent sharpening due to the softness of copper. Workers also used hard stone pounding tools made from materials such as dolerite to break apart larger sections of rock. To separate a block from the bedrock, workers often employed wooden wedges that were inserted into small cracks or grooves in the stone. Water was then poured over the wooden wedges, causing them to expand as they absorbed moisture. This expansion created pressure within the cracks, gradually forcing the stone to split along the desired lines. This simple but effective technique allowed workers to break large pieces of stone away from the quarry without the need for advanced machinery. Once a block had been removed, it needed to be shaped and smoothed before being transported. Stonecutters used chisels, hammerstones, and abrasives such as sand to refine the surfaces of each block. Although the pyramid's internal core blocks did not require perfect finishing, the outer casing stones had to be cut with exceptional precision. These casing stones fit together so tightly that in some cases it is difficult to insert even a thin blade between them. Transporting the blocks from the quarry to the construction site was another enormous task. Workers likely used wooden sledges to drag the heavy stones across the ground. Evidence from ancient wall paintings and archaeological discoveries suggests that teams of laborers pulled these sledges using thick ropes. To reduce friction, workers may have poured water or mud on the sand in front of the sledges, allowing them to slide more easily across the desert surface. For stones that came from distant quarries, the Nile River played a crucial role. During Egypt's annual flood season, the river expanded and covered much of the surrounding land. Builders took advantage of this natural event by transporting stones on large boats along the Nile. Temporary canals may have been constructed to bring these boats closer to the construction site, allowing the heavy blocks to be unloaded with minimal land transport. The entire process, from quarrying the stone to shaping it and delivering it to the pyramid site, required careful organization and coordination. Thousands of workers had to perform their tasks in a synchronized system to keep the project moving forward. Quarry workers, stonecutters, transport teams, engineers, and supervisors all played vital roles in this massive operation. By the time each block arrived at the construction site, it was ready to become part of the growing pyramid. Yet, one of the greatest mysteries still remained. How were these enormous stones lifted and placed at increasing heights as the pyramid rose higher and higher? In the next part, we will explore the transportation and lifting techniques that ancient Egyptians used to move millions of heavy stones and raise them into position as the pyramid gradually took shape. After the massive stone blocks had been quarried and shaped, the next challenge was transporting them to the pyramid construction site. Moving millions of heavy stones across land and water without modern machinery required remarkable ingenuity and organization. The ancient Egyptians developed efficient transportation systems that relied on human labor, simple mechanical principles, and the natural advantages provided by the Nile River. These systems allowed builders to move stones weighing several tons with surprising effectiveness. One of the most common methods used to move stone blocks across land involved wooden sledges. A sledge was essentially a large wooden platform with runners on the bottom, designed to slide across the ground. Workers placed a stone block on the sledge and then used thick ropes to pull it forward. Teams of laborers, sometimes numbering dozens of people, would coordinate their movements to drag the sledge across prepared pathways leading toward the construction site. Ancient Egyptian wall paintings provide valuable clues about how this process worked. One famous illustration discovered in a tomb shows a large statue being transported on a wooden sledge, while a worker standing at the front pours water onto the sand. Modern scientific studies have confirmed that this technique was highly effective. When water is poured onto sand in the right amount, it causes the sand grains to stick together slightly, making the surface firmer. This reduces friction and allows heavy sledges to slide more easily, significantly decreasing the effort required by the workers pulling them. Transporting stones across long distances required additional planning. For blocks quarried near the Giza Plateau, sledges could be used to move stones directly from the quarry to the pyramid site. However, many of the stones used in the pyramids came from locations farther away. In these cases, the Nile River became the main transportation route. The river functioned as a natural highway that connected various regions of Egypt, allowing heavy materials to be transported efficiently by boat. Large barges were constructed to carry stone blocks along the Nile. Workers loaded the stones onto these boats at the quarry sites and then floated them downstream or upstream depending on the location of the construction project. Granite blocks from Aswan, for example, traveled hundreds of kilometers along the river before reaching the Giza region. The movement of these massive stones required careful coordination between quarry workers, sailors, and builders at the destination. During the annual flooding season, the Nile spread across large portions of the surrounding landscape. This natural event, which was essential for Egyptian agriculture, also created opportunities for construction projects. Builders could dig temporary canals that connected the river to areas closer to the pyramid site. Boats carrying heavy stones could then travel along these canals, delivering their cargo much nearer to the construction zone. This significantly reduced the distance that stones needed to be dragged across land. Once the blocks reached the construction site, workers unloaded them and prepared them for placement within the pyramid structure. However, the challenge of lifting these stones to higher levels remained one of the most difficult aspects of the project. As the pyramid grew taller, builders needed a reliable system for raising heavy blocks to increasingly greater heights. Most historians and archaeologists believe that ramps played a crucial role in this process. Ramps made from mud bricks, limestone chips, and compacted earth could be built alongside the pyramid as construction progressed. Workers would drag the stone blocks up these ramps using sledges and ropes, gradually moving them higher as new layers of the pyramid were added. The ramps themselves would be extended or modified as the structure grew. There are several theories about the exact design of these ramps. Some researchers believe that a straight ramp extended from the ground to the upper levels of the pyramid. Others suggest that ramps may have wrapped around the pyramid in a spiral pattern, allowing workers to reach higher levels without building an extremely long, straight ramp. Another possibility is that multiple ramps were used at different stages of construction, with builders adjusting the system as the pyramid rose higher. Regardless of the exact design, the ramp system required large quantities of additional materials and constant maintenance. Workers needed to ensure that the ramps remained stable and strong enough to support both the stone blocks and the teams of laborers pulling them upward. Supervisors likely coordinated these efforts carefully to maintain efficiency and safety throughout the construction process. The transportation and lifting of millions of stones required an immense workforce operating with precise organization. Teams had to work in harmony, each group performing specific tasks that contributed to the overall progress of the pyramid. Without effective leadership and planning, such a massive undertaking would have been impossible. Yet, an important question still remains: who were the people performing this enormous labor? For many years, popular stories suggested that the pyramids were built by slaves. However, modern archaeological discoveries have revealed a very different and much more fascinating reality. In the next part, we will explore the lives of the workers who built the pyramids, the communities that supported them, and the complex social system that made this monumental construction project possible. The construction of the pyramids was not the work of slaves, as long-held myths once claimed, but rather the result of a highly organized workforce composed of skilled laborers, craftsmen, and seasonal workers. Archaeological discoveries on the Giza Plateau have revealed the remains of workers' villages, providing unprecedented insight into the daily lives of the people who built these monumental structures. These findings have helped historians understand the social, economic, and logistical systems that made such massive construction possible. Evidence from these villages shows that the workers were provided with organized housing, food, and medical care. Stone-built accommodations indicate that the laborers were housed in communal structures, allowing supervisors to manage large teams efficiently. The diet of these workers was rich in protein, including meat, fish, bread, and vegetables, which supported the physical demands of hauling heavy stones and performing precise construction work. Medical facilities, including traces of healed injuries, suggest that the workers received care and attention when accidents occurred, highlighting the value placed on their labor. Workers were divided into specialized teams with distinct roles. Some were responsible for quarrying stones, others for transporting them, while highly skilled stonemasons cut and polished the blocks for placement. Supervisors and engineers coordinated these teams, ensuring that each stone was delivered, positioned, and aligned correctly. The laborers were motivated not only by material support but also by a sense of civic and religious duty. Contributing to the construction of a pharaoh's pyramid was considered an honorable and sacred task, allowing workers to participate in a project with spiritual significance that would endure for eternity. Seasonal labor played a critical role in the workforce. During the annual flooding of the Nile, agricultural activities temporarily halted, freeing up large numbers of workers who could then contribute to construction projects. This seasonal schedule allowed the state to mobilize tens of thousands of laborers without disrupting the agricultural economy. Estimates suggest that anywhere from 20,000 to 30,000 workers were actively involved in the construction of the Great Pyramid at any given time, with additional support personnel providing food, tools, and other logistical necessities. Interestingly, archaeological evidence also indicates that workers left graffiti inside the pyramids and in nearby quarries, marking the names of their work gangs or expressing pride in their achievements. These inscriptions serve as a remarkable reminder that ordinary people, not just pharaohs, contributed to creating these wonders. It also highlights a sense of teamwork and community spirit among the laborers, who recognize that their efforts were part of a monumental legacy. The social organization extended beyond the construction site itself. Entire villages developed around pyramid projects, supporting the workforce with supplies, workshops, and administrative centers. These communities had structured roles and responsibilities, much like a small city dedicated entirely to the monumental task at hand. This level of planning and management demonstrates the advanced administrative capabilities of ancient Egypt, as well as the state's ability to mobilize and sustain a large workforce for decades. The scale and sophistication of the workforce also reveal why the pyramids were built to last. Every stage of construction was meticulously planned, from quarrying and transporting stones to precise placement and alignment. This attention to detail, combined with the organization of labor, ensured that the pyramids could withstand the test of time, preserving both the tombs of the pharaohs and a testament to the ingenuity of the civilization that built them. In the next part, we will delve into the engineering techniques used to raise these massive stones into place and the methods that allowed the pyramid to maintain structural stability as it reached incredible heights.